Please, if you have any questions, raise your hands if there's anything I don't cover. My mother was born in New York City, but she was from the South and related to Robert E. Lee. My father came from Newark, New Jersey on Branchbrook Park, and he was related to the Northern Lees. Charles, General Lee, who was led away from Veal's Tavern in disgrace because he was found in bed at Veal's Tavern with the barmaid during the war. So I'm related to both Northern and Southern Lees. I'm very happy to have my daughter Nikki here to support me because I'm nervous as can be, and I shouldn't be. I'm talking about a town which I loved and grew up in, and was very sad when we moved away, and I'll explain why we had to move away. My father worked for Smith and Hemingway, which was a tool company which my mother's father started, and when he ran it, he called it the Red Devil Tool Company, and that's why I'll explain why students at Ridge High School are called the Red Devils, because there doesn't seem to be any reason why. My father grew up near Branchbrook Park, and we used to go down. I had two brothers when we lived here. Another was coordinator. We used to go down every Sunday, an old-fashioned, wonderful Sunday dinner with Nana Lee, who had a 4-story building, and it was always filled with relatives. There was the alcoholic who had no uncle alcoholic who had to go home, and anyway, it was always filled with people. It was a treat to go there. We lived in Maplewood, and in 1939 moved to Cedar Hill. And I was absolutely bowled over by Cedar Hill. It was bordered by North Finley Avenue and South Finley Avenue, and it was hundreds of acres. I don't know how many hundreds. There was a glorious house and orchards. We had peach and apple, and there was a mile-long walk through the orchards called Maple Way. And my mother always said, "Oh, Dulcy, that's wonderful. You could be married going down Maple Way." And I thought, do I have to march an aisle to the altar? Come on. We moved from Maplewood in 1939, and I was driven. A house like Cedar Hill required quite a staff, so we had a butler, chauffeur, Otto, who turned out to be a German spy. We had Ino in the kitchen, and we had Uno, who would take care of me and my mother. And Otto would drive me to school. I would be very embarrassed to go to the Oak Street school, so I'd tell him to stop so I could walk the last blocks. I have my report card from the Oak Street school, which was pretty good until, as my father said, I discovered boys, and then he sent me to Kent Place, which was all girls, and I had to study. Cedar Hill had two main houses with workers who lived in them because they worked on the plantation. On South Finley Avenue was Joe Lenzo, and on North was Al, and that little building is now I think it's the health center. We had hundreds of acres, and they lived there because they worked in the peach and apple farms, and I had no idea how many hundreds and hundreds of apples and peach trees we had. We also had cherry trees. The house was built by Mr. Owen from England. I don't know when it was built, but my family bought it at an estate sale, totally furnished. And a house like this required quite a staff. So as I explained, we had Otto, Ino, and Uno. If you came in the front hall, there was a large front hall with a huge table, and Otto, being German, always built these wonderful Christmas gardens with little trains and houses that lit up for us. So we were so excited we couldn't wait until he put it out on the table. To the right was a library. It had a beautiful chicken piano, which I played. I took piano lessons. And the whole wall glassed in books by Burbank, because Mr. Owen was very interested in horticulture. But when I took the books out, none of the pages had even been split. I never read them. And we don't know what happened to Mrs. Owen, whether she came and was unhappy and died there, or whether she went back to England. But the ghost of Mrs. Owen is in that house. And I would hear her every night come up the steps and take a left turn. My bedroom was the first on the left, and she would come in my room and stand over me. And I told my mother, and my mother fixed up her room across the hall, which was a hat room, with all of Mrs. Owen's favorite tea set and favorite furniture, and said, Mrs. Owen, I want you to go there and leave my daughter alone. And she stopped coming into my room.
Dulcy, how old were you then, and what year did you move into that property?
This was I started the Oak Street School, so I was 7 years old. I started in the first grade.
And she moved in 1939.
1939.
I missed that, okay, thank you.
To describe the house itself, to the left was a huge dining room. Through that was a servant's dining room, and as children we were asked to eat in the servant's dining room until we could behave and have good manners. If you went through the servant's dining room, you'd go to the kitchen. I was never allowed in the kitchen because the cook didn't want anyone disturbing her. Beyond that was a courtyard where laundry was hung, and I used to ride my bicycle round and round. To the right of the main hall, past the music room, was a huge living room with black walnut paneling up to the ceiling. And it had something British, which I don't know the name of. It has a little roof. It has sides coming out to sit on. Does anyone know the name of this? It comes out from the fireplace, and you sit in it.
Inglenook.
Oh, in England.
Inglenook, thank you.
Yeah.
So there was an inglenook there, and then there was a porch off that. Now, my brother was at Bernards High School, and he was courting a girl, and my best friend was Nancy Sheenan, who lived to the south on South Henley Avenue. They had a farm, right, and they lived next to John Jacob Astor, and she taught me how to milk a cow, which is not very easy. But she and I would get into all kinds of scrapes. And one of them was we decided one night, one afternoon, that we wanted to peek on my brother John and see what he was doing with his girlfriend on the couch. So we went down in the cellar where there was a dumbwaiter to bring up wood, and we both got in the dumbwaiter, and you could hear it go screech, screech, screech. And then we popped out, hello, we're just walking through. Another time I wanted to watch them, I ran around outside because I thought I could run as fast as the wind and they couldn't see me, and I ran into a tree and knocked myself out. So they came to pick me up, which was very embarrassing. Outside, there was a beautiful rose garden. My mother was quite a gardener with a little pool. And beyond that was an alley of maples called Maple Way, which went for 1 mile from the house in the garden down to the barn where the peaches and apples and cherries, which we grew. We had thousands of peach trees, thousands of apple trees. And at the barn, they would haggle with the retailers like Whiteman's Farm about buying them. And here's a picture of Maple Way. I know there's streets called Maple Way now, so perhaps it comes from that.
sad to say, I'm doing a program with a historian. Maple Way was sadly named after a maple tree.
No maple trees?
No.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Same as oak, you know.
They would be
There's a lot of tree names here in town, and they were just named after.
They would be 84 years old if they were
Sorry.
here. Anyway, my friend and I, Nancy Shane, had a lot of fun experiences. One night we camped out way down by the front gate, which to us was a mile away from Cedar Hill, and she had a flashlight and she said, "What are those eyes?"
That's a.
And I said, "Oh my God, that's a mountain lion or something vicious." So we ran up to the hill and we got my father's brothers and they went chasing down. There was another road down to South Finney Avenue and they chased this mountain lion away. We never did sleep out by the gate again. But it was fun when there was snow to slide from the top of Cedar Hill down that back road all the way down to South Finney Avenue. The farm was very profitable for many years, but eventually what happened is that the taxes became too high as Basking Ridge developed. Basking Ridge is a very sleepy, quiet town, no parades, nothing going on. But as it grew and more houses were built, the taxes were prohibitive, and sad to say, my father could not afford them. So he first tried to sell the house to Jack Astor, who didn't want it, just the house and the rose garden. Someone else bought it, and then they bought it. Then they sold it to Billy Astor, Jack Astor's son. So it never really was an Astor house. Billy and his wife, who was from the Midwest, did not like living in a huge house like that where they didn't know anyone, and they moved out. So it was only an Astor house for 2 years when his son Billy was in it.
Someone had told me, just to add to that, that actually Billy Astor moved and lived right on sort of Lake Road, somewhere on Lake Road.
Right,
Is that where he lived?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, this was not for his wife, a house like
By
this
all
with the
work.
staff and so forth.
Yeah.
Then, unhappily, as I say, the taxes became much too expensive as the town grew up. And my father, in about 1947, made a deal with the town. I don't know what the deal was, whether it was money exchange or he donated it. I have a feeling he donated all of the orchards, and that is now Ridge High School. And at that, and that's why they are called the Red Devils. And at that point, we moved to Bernardsville, to a house called Dunleith. But I love Basking Ridge, and I walked to school every day. I would have a chauffeur let me out because I was very embarrassed to be chauffeured to school. It was over a mile walk from Cedar Hill down to the Oak Street School. I found my report card, which was so-so until I discovered boys. As I say, the ghost of Mrs. Owen is still in that house.
So tell us why you think the ghost is still in the house.
Because I have been through it about 5 years ago
Okay.
with the town council that's now there, and we went through the house, and I could sense her.
Okay.
I could sense her going up the stairs. I could sense her near my
I got
former
goosebumps.
bedroom, the half house, the half room that was fixed up for her.
She stays upstairs?
She wandered around the house. She's still in that house.
She probably hangs in the tax office. She didn't like
Maybe.
it. Or the assessor's office.
But it was a beautiful, beautiful place and a wonderful, wonderful childhood. And we would wander all through the orchards. And I had a cousin who would pull me on a sleigh on the icy snow because we had ice storms all through the orchards. And the trees would be covered with ice and sparkling. I don't know if any of you remember those ice storms we had in the olden days.
Dulcie, how many sisters and brothers did you have in that house?
2 brothers. One brother was born later. And it was a difficult birth because my mother had broken her back. So she delivered Todd with a broken back, if you could imagine.
Oh my gosh.
And he died at 40 of leukemia. And my older brothers are both dead.
Oh my goodness.
There was I had told Mrs. Green that there was a gentleman here who said that his mother, at the last talk you gave, his mother had babysat for Dulcie's brothers. Do you remember his name?
Oh, yeah, that was
Oh,
Doug.
Doug.
What was
Sloss.
Doug's, what's his surname?
Sloss.
Sloss. So it would have been a Mrs. Sloss.
Interesting.
Who was the,
Interesting.
yeah, who
he
was
lives up the
babysitter.
street.
Yeah, he lives
He
right
lives-
up at
he
the
lives right up the
corner
street.
on Mount Airy.
Uh-huh.
And his mother she was an artist.
It's
And,
interesting that I don't
and
remember.
she also is known for, her babysitting talents were
Uh-huh.
quite renowned. She was
You
the one
probably
that
have to know her maiden name, though.
told us, no, it was
No.
when she was married early.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it would have been his name.
Okay.
Sloss.
Is she still alive? I'd love to meet her.
She
is
would
not.
be. He's in his.
He's 92
Yeah.
or
So-
90, so.
But he's around, he would remember, because he also said that he used to play with your older brother.
Yes.
Oh, because he would have been their age.
Yes,
He was their
George.
age, so
That's
he
right.
used to
Yeah, I forgot
have a
that.
play date sometimes. I thought, oh, that's amazing.
Poor George, my brothers each went to Culver Military Academy, and then they were supposed to go into the service as a second lieutenant, but my brother had such bad eyes he couldn't get out of bed without putting his glasses on. He couldn't even get in the Merchant Marines, but then they drafted him and sent him to Korea. And he was in the barracks eating during the Korean War when they were surrounded, and he jumped out the window, his glasses were shot off, and he wandered around, and he happened to wander in the right direction to the Allied troops and survived.
Oh my gosh.
I met Nelson Shannon, my friend's older brother. I think he's a trustee of the Morris Museum, but I re-met Nancy Shannon at Smith. We were both in the same class at Smith, having moved to Bernardsville and gone away to boarding school. So it was nice to meet her in a class of 55 at Smith.
Wow.
Wow.
Dulcie, do you know how much your dad paid for the house in 1939?
Excuse
Do
me?
you know how much he paid for the house in 1939?
See, they never discussed money with me, but a house and hundreds of acres, he may have paid the equivalent of $100,000.
Equivalent of 100, now? No.
Then,
Then, okay.
which was a lot, but
A lot of
it was a big white elephant, and they wanted to get their money for it because they'd gone back to England.
So your father bought it from the original owner?
Yes,
Owen.
Mr.
From the
Owen.
builder, from Owen? Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Was he the architect, Owen?
No, he was.
I don't know who the architect was, I just know that Mr. Owen built it with his own architect. Yes.
How did your family, whoever discovered that Otto was a German spy?
Yes. Yes.
Well, he used to go to a place called the Schwab.
Ah,
Oh, yes.
Do you know the Schwab?
it's not there anymore. It's in Warren.
He had a radio in his room,
I used to go
and
to
he
all.
disappeared one day.
Oh,
And we couldn't figure out what information he was getting from us. We didn't know anything about what was going on during the war. we had, as everyone did, a wonderful victory garden, and we grew all our vegetables, and we saved our foil and tin cans and recycled everything.
So that's how you knew he was a spy?
Yes.
He disappeared,
Yes, he
and then
disappeared.
you looked in his room, he had a
He
radio.
had a radio, a shortwave radio.
Oh.
Now, what was that place?
The Schweigerschwab, the Silver Swan.
Where is the
Well, the Schwabische Alb's not there anymore.
It's not there
tore it
anymore,
down.
but it was a
No,
wonderful German restaurant.
It's where the Germans gathered.
Well, and I grew up in Warren, but Warren even when I was young, Warren was predominantly German. The only language that was taught in school
That's
was
right.
German, so
That's
the
right.
Schwabische Alb stayed there. It was closed during the Second World War. They weren't allowed to operate it because they feared,
Right.
the Nazis. And probably about 10 years ago, a developer bought it because they would be only open on the weekend, and they'd have an oompa band, and they, serve all the stuff.
Well, I
And
miss the Christmas gardens. He would work all year long on them. They were so special. I guess that's a German tradition. The little grasses and the little flower beds and the little trees that had Christmas lights on them about that big. And a railroad that went all around through the mountains and around the garden. I mean, I loved him. And then I was so upset to hear that he was a German spy, because we actually went for a drive in the country and came back. We had one of the first television sets, because my father knew Mark Woods, which was a huge box. And the television came in the top of it, and you opened it and you saw it in the mirror in reverse. And that's how we heard about the war.
Pearl Harbor?
Old Thomas announced.
Was it Pearl Harbor?
It was Pearl Harbor, yes. And most of the time there was just a test pattern. And then Old Thomas would be on for about 1 hour in the afternoon with news.
You mentioned Red Devil Tools.
Yes.
You said that did I understand correctly, your father started that?
No, my mother's father started. It was called Smith and Hemingway. And when my father married my mother, he took it over, but not for a while, because Poppy Smith didn't want to let go of it, and he would send my father off on business trips all over the place, and trying to avoid it. And eventually it became too old, and my father took it over, and it became Red Devil Tool.
I'm from Maplewood originally. I'm born and raised in Maplewood.
I lived right off of Collinwood Drive,
I
in
know exactly where you live.
Tower Hill.
Yep, I know where you are. I'm Parker Avenue.
We were on
Between
the corner.
Hudson and Union, and my best friend, and now I can't remember, in those days she was my best friend, Angela, her father worked for Red Devil Tools his whole life. We knew Red Devil
Really?
Tools. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. If I think of the name, it'll come back to. It was an Italian last name,
Yeah.
but I went to Clinton School, I grew up. Yeah, I know
Well,
Red
when I was on the board, I kept saying what would be smart would be to buy the Red Devil Paint Company. They need to have everything tied up, but the decision was not made to do that.
Devil.
We still have glass cutters and paint shakers, and in the Mendham hardware store, there is a Red Devil tool shaker from that era, which he said has been working all these years, and he shakes the paint in it.
Red Devil Tools. That's something. Good tools.
But I love Basking Ridge. It's a wonderful, wonderful town. It was such, I went to St. Mark's Church, and Bill Nyman, the rector, would take the choir, which was very small, to sing when we were through, to St. Bernards to sing, and then we would go to St. John's on the Mountain to sing. Because none of them had a large enough congregation, so Sunday morning was singing all morning.
Do you remember who your teachers were at Oak Street School?
I don't remember any teachers. I had my report card.
And what subjects were they? Regular subjects like spelling and?
Yes, the spells were days absent, and I had 11 because I was doing a great deal of riding, and a horse threw me into a stone wall, and I had a concussion, so I was not in school for 11 days. Times tardy, 0. geography A, history and civics A, spelling A, writing A, drawing A, manual training, nothing, they didn't give us any manual training.
I was going to say, I wonder what that was.
Music A, because I was quite a singer and I was in a play, and I had hair I could sit on, and I remember cutting it off for the war effort and looking at it and thinking, I'll never grow that again. During World War II, plastic was developed, but they used human hair for bomb sites. So I like to think that my hair was bombing Germany.
What did they do with it? Dulcy?
Yeah.
What was that, they used hair for crosshairs?
Crosshairs for bomb sites. They developed plastic during the Second World War.
And they needed the
And
girls
they used human hair, so I cut my hair all off and donated it to the litter.
to put in between the ears.
That's amazing.
I thought it was real hair. That is fascinating.
And before I cut it off, I used to do trolley car loops and braid it around my head because I was in a play at the school, and there was a boy.
Oh, okay.
And that was right after I cut my hair off, so that worked out very well.
Why did they use a human hair?
There was no plastic. Plastic was developed during World War II.
They probably couldn't draw a line as thin repeatedly, consistently, to get the crosshairs. So if you take two hairs and glue them onto the glass plate, that's the cider.
Got it.
That's really interesting.
So I like to think besides a victory garden, that we would sell the vegetables to as many people as we could or give them, that I was bombing Germany.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
That's
Wow.
really interesting.
Physical training, C. What do I got C?
Because they didn't see you riding.
That's Jim.
I rode, I played tennis. Maybe I didn't do calisthenics very well. I don't know. But then it turned into a B the second half of the year and an A.
That's improvement.
I must have flunked off the first half of the 5th grade and then shaped up the second half.
So this was your 5th grade we broke up?
This is my 5th grade.
Okay.
And hygiene, all A's, which is not happy to hear, but I was clean.
Oh my goodness.
That's great.
So she may not say this, but she was a very good tennis player because she learned from her father and her older brothers, and a very good writer. She won shows. But I don't think she did either at school.
Yeah.
So they didn't know.
Yeah.
They didn't see her.
Wow. How did you meet your husband, Dulcie?
I met my husband, Nikki's father, because I was at Smith College and the boy that I was seeing was drafted, and he said, my friend will take care of you.
You did.
And that was Peter Dupont, who is Nikki's father. I have two girls and 2 boys. Nikki, Alicia, Peter, and Scott Dupont. And Nikki is a Spanish interpreter. She's beautiful with languages.
Oh,
She's called in by the police at night and she interprets for abused Hispanic women and tells them there's a safe place for them to go. At 2 o'clock in the morning she'll go having a job all day. I'm very proud of her.
Wow.
And she can say they come from Colombia or they come from Honduras or... And her brother Peter is very good at language too. He lives in Bangkok. He's married to a Thai, and he speaks fluent Thai, which he'll say a word to me, and then he'll say it slightly differently, and I can't even hear the difference. They sound exactly the same to me. And when I first went to visit them in Bangkok, these signs go around the whole airport, and I said to Peter, where does the word stop? And he says, well, you just know. I said, oh, okay.
okay. Are you bilingual?
Pardon me?
Are you bilingual?
I had Latin, I speak a little French and a little Italian because I was a singer and a music major and Italian was required. And I haven't had anyone to speak much French or Italian with, so I'm not very good anymore.
We have a
Right here, she's an
Italian
Italian and French teacher.
Want to brush up?
I could,
Maplewood.
I could come sleep with you, I would love that.
Home catcher, you know what I'm.
Oh, that's
I'm from Maplewood as well.
Are you?
I was in fielding school,
Oh, sure,
grew up on Academy Street.
yeah.
Okay, so I'll let you guys all on a secret here. Basking Ridge in Bernards Township actually is a suburb of Maplewood. There is a huge, I swear to God,
Oh, yes,
it
they
is, there is a huge, I must know 40 people.
Yes,
From Maplewood.
they would come out from New York, they would come out from Montclair, they would come out from all these towns to Basking Ridge in the summer. And I was told that it was called Basking Ridge because the Indians basked on the ridge.
I heard that
I heard it
the
was
deer,
down-
deer
Deer
basked on the
Deer
ridge.
cows.
The deer.
So,
My family came from here and went to Maplewood.
that's fine.
Really?
Trainer.
What, they missed the concrete? No, the interesting story that when I talk to the people that are, like I said, from Maplewood, every one of them seems to say that Basking Ridge reminds them of what Maplewood used to be,
Oh, I wouldn't say that.
for some reason.
No, I.
Obviously, the houses
I
are
mean, there's a
different.
central road in Maplewood,
Sure.
and there's quite a hill going up.
I think they
Basking Ridge
mean
is flat.
the just the, sort of the aura of sort of the community is what it was.
Yes, and it's all in the community. And the other day I went to a party and someone came up to me and said, "Oh, I went to nursery school with you." And I thought, oh. And that was the end of the Central Avenue that Tower Mountain and Collinwood Drive came off of. There was a nursery school. And the one thing I could never do is go from one bar to the other, you know, hanging.
Yes, yes, the monkey.
Oh, yeah, very bad at that.
The hanging bars.
I don't see any significant, I don't see any, how do you say it?
Resemblance?
I'm thinking of Italian right now. Any resemblance whatsoever. I came up to this area because I taught at Bernards High School.
Mhm.
And I was looking for a teaching job, and when I went for an interview, it was 1977, 76, something like that. And Freusland, who was the principal, said to me, because I said I'd like to get a job here at Bernards High School, and he said, "We're not going to hire you unless you say Bernards." So that was it, but it's interesting, but I agree with this gentleman in the sense that I was just two different, you know, which
Sure.
love.
So, I have another question.
Question?
Oh, sorry, Beth.
Mrs. Green, what did you do for fun back then in Basking Ridge?
Right.
Sure do.
Oh, well, we just played all through the orchards. Did I say we would sit up in the apple tree and read, and I would go down and visit the Shanes and milk cows, and we didn't do exciting things. We just played around the grounds. My family would play charades. We played that a lot, but as children, I can't think of different.
Someone told us that the Ridge Pizzeria used to be the bowling alley. Did you bowl there?
I don't remember bowling alley. All I remember is Cedar Hill and the church without any of these other things there, and a house, a big white house, which I guess is part of the Catholic Church, which belonged to friends of ours called Zangline. It's interesting, for some reason, all of my parents' friends had no children. They were all single couples, and my family had 4 children. But the Harrisons, the Ayers, the Zanglines, very funny, they had no children.
So what did you do in summer? Did you go away? Did your family go away?
In the summer, we went to Maine. We had a house in a place called Biddeford Pool,
Okay.
and my son John was the pilot.
Brother John.
My brother John was the pilot, and we kept a small plane, which was a Red Devil plane that we used for our own purposes. First, we had well, I don't remember what the first one was, but the second one was a Beechcraft, which was very exciting. And when we flew, I would always sit in the cockpit with John, and there was no radar. We would follow the tracks and follow the roads to go visit cousins in Kentucky, that kind of thing.
You know, he had his license.
Oh, he had his license before he had his driver's license, and we had to drive him to the airport so he could fly us to Maine.
Wow.
Did you ever go to New York City as a family, like just for outing or something?
Oh, we went to New York a lot. We went to the Stork Club where my father had a table in Sherman Buildings. He would say, "Oh, hi, Mr. Lee." And we went to the theater all the time. They were very big on going to New York and seeing plays and going to fancy restaurants.
South Pacific?
Yeah, South Pacific.
So you
Nationals.
mentioned DuPont, and everybody knows certainly the name DuPont.
Yes.
Can you let me know,
Hi, Harvey.
how does that fit into there's obviously
Well,
multiple
she's a
Delaware DuPonts and
She's
New York.
she's a member of the DuPont family, because I was married to Peter DuPont, who was a member of the DuPont family.
Okay.
But there are two kinds of DuPonts, working DuPonts and rich DuPonts.
That's a good line, I like that.
And
I'm gonna write that down.
the Peter DuPont whom I married was a member of the working DuPonts. And when he graduated from Yale, he went to work for F.I. DuPont, Francis I. DuPont. His grandfather had developed Orlon and had an outing with the company, moved to New York and founded this brokerage firm. It was the largest commodity firm on the street. And poor Peter was put in the back office with Uncle Brett, who was drunk and never there. And it was not his fault, but they went through total bankruptcy.
Well, they were bought by Ross Perot, right?
Right. Even Ross Perot tried to bail them out, and he couldn't.
But my grandfather, Peter DuPont's father, Emile Francis, he worked for the DuPont company his entire career, and he was on the board, and he was very well thought of, and he had a big role in keeping there was kind of a split in the family, and the major control of the company stayed with one side, who were the very wealthy DuPonts now, and then sort of everyone else. And he kept them talking and working
Yes, he
together.
did. He was a
Yeah.
wonderful man.
He was
We
an
called him-
amazing guy.
We called him Papa Chick. We
Papa
all
Chick,
adored
yeah.
him.
And he had a lot to do with the Brandywine, the museum, the Hadley House and the museum of Brandywine.
Yes, and Red and Sally's older sister, Sally's older brother,
Nick.
Nick, is in charge of the Brandywine Museum.
Yeah, so that was a DuPont family museum about what the powder factory used to look like when the DuPonts were helping the Americans because their gunpowder was so much better, and then it became the chemical company.
Yeah, Pierre DuPont came over with,
His two sons.
what was her wife's name? Nicole Ledet de Longfort DuPont de Nemours, during the Revolutionary War, to develop powder on the Brandywine War during the Revolution.
So I have just another question. I've done some research back, and I met some people that lived certainly around that area, probably when you were there. I had the Ludlows, the Conklins, the Demorests.
Oh, the Conklins lived across the street from us.
Okay. So but I was under the impression that the Ludlow, who lived in the house across the street,
No.
wasn't he the Red Devil Paint Company?
No, there was no Ludlow across the street. It was the Conklins. And
Conklins, I mean. I'm sorry.
the Conklins lived
What's
across
that?
the street.
Well, it is a paint company.
And his grandson, Freddie Reynolds, I knew in dancing school. We all went to Mrs. Hull's dancing school.
Where was that?
That was the Barnes Studio.
No, that's
Just
in
outside of
Burns.
Far Hills. And we
In
all
Bernardsville?
had
I think, isn't it in
had a
Bernardsville?
dance. And Mr. Shalif was the dance master. And he was very little, and he'd always pick me because I loved to dance. And I'd always squish down and pretend I was little. So he hanging over his head.
I went to Mrs. Shelley's dancing school in Short Hills.
Yes, he did, he did. The Sharif and Short Hills and the Barnes too around here, you're absolutely right.
Oh, my goodness.
Many years ago.
Many years ago.
But my grandfather's name, my mother's father's name was George Ludlow Lee.
Ah.
George Ludlow Lee.
Okay.
So, I don't know.
There were no Ludlows.
No, but there must have been some relative at some point, because he's George Ludlow Lee, maybe that's where.
Well, he came from Newark, Branchbrook Park, the best house. And my grandmother used to say, Newark is where the nice people live, the fast people live in New York City.
So your grandparents, what type of business was your grandfather in?
Excuse me?
Your grandfather, what type of business was he in? How
It
did
was
he make a
called
living?
Smith and Hemingway Tool Company.
That was the original, okay.
That was the original name.
Red Devil,
And then when my father came to work for him,
okay.
he took a long time to let my father take over. And it became the Red Devil Tool Company. I don't know why.
Why? And why did they call it?
I don't
Red
know
Devil?
why he picked Red Devil. I have no idea, out of the blue.
Okay.
I'm gonna send you, if I can get maybe your email or something, I'll send you over this stuff, because I had a long sit down. I used to go over and take care of, his name was John Plackow. I don't know if anyone in town knew who he was. He actually was caretaker for the Conklins at the White, if you go down Finley and the road starts to bend, right where what they call Widow White's Tavern was, right on the right, he lived right back there and took care of all the property they owned from Finley all the way through back past Allward. And they used to have a cattle farm. And he was a really interesting guy.
Yes,
I
but
used to take him to breakfast every
he's dead, and his only relatives that I know of, Freddie Reynolds is dead,
Okay.
and Ann Reynolds is in a mental institution.
Well, she's in a care place.
Right.
Her memory is terrible.
Yours isn't.
Now, who was
I
the
think we have a
woman?
movie here, if anybody's
That
in.
just
No, she's a
passed
good
away that
bridge
had the
player,
house
she does
right
crossword puzzles.
No, but
102 years old.
She'll sell her story.
Well, the big thing I do, which I hope you all do, is Tai Chi.
Ah.
Tai Chi Qigong for balance. Tai Chi Qigong for balance, and you'll never fall.
Where do you go for your Tai Chi?
She did
I
something
go
on her
to,
house, built a mansion up the street.
The,
Millie Van Dyke.
it's down,
I've seen Hackney.
Millie didn't
it's
grow
down
up.
at
She
the
come out in the summer.
Atlantic Health Center,
Okay,
down South Street,
yeah.
and it's taught every Saturday from 11 to 12:30 by a wonderful woman who accepts beginners, and there are all kinds of poses.
You're not available on Saturdays either.
We'll find it.
Mrs.
As
Green,
well.
Yeah,
when, after you left Basking Ridge, did you say you went to Bernardsville?
yes.
And then, did you remain there when you married?
No, we went to Dunleith.
Well,
Oh,
no, that's where.
Margaret has the
Bernard-
book.
Oh, yeah, send that around. People like to see that.
Oh,
The house that she lived in
Walking now.
is mentioned in
Oh.
the Somerset Hills, New Jersey country houses by Mr. Turpin, John Turpin, who was of the Turpin.
For whom I worked, I was a Turpin agent.
And it was called Dunley.
Fortified Hill.
Dunleith. It's Leith.
Dunleith.
Dunleith. So we'll pass this around so you can see that this
So
was.
this is where you moved, from here you moved to
Yes.
Dunleith?
Yes, and I was married there.
And you were married, and you remained there after you married?
No, after I married, I moved with my husband, who was drafted into the slums in Dundalk, Maryland, across from a whiskey factory. And I thought my mother had had a fit when she came to visit. There were crumbs in the floor, and you could hear the people downstairs arguing.
Oh my goodness.
But it was an adventure.
Dulcie.
And I learned to cook. When I married, I said to my father, there's one big problem. All I can do is pour a glass of water because I've never been allowed in the kitchen. And he said, well, it gave you a good education. I went to Oak Street School, Kent Place, Chatham Hall, a boarding school, Smith College. And you can learn how to cook.
Oh, if you learned all that.
So I had fun. I took Chinese cooking lessons, Italian cooking lessons. I made it a project.
Wow. Dulcie, you mentioned that you were a Smith graduate in 1955. Were you a debutante? Did they do that?
Oh, yes, I did that. Yes.
Oh, tell us a little bit about that.
Well,
Was it here in Basking?
I first had a party at my house. They put a tent up next to Dunleaps on the side. And I talked to a couple of people who said, I crashed your party. It was the greatest.
She was gorgeous. She came out in New York. She was beautiful. She was on some magazine covers, right? Or in magazine.
Well, I was the debutante of the year.
Really?
Wow.
Were you?
There you go.
Then there was a huge reception in New York when
What year was that?
you had to have 2 escorts and you came and bowed and were presented in New York City. And then you went to parties all around the country. We would go to Rhode Island where I had a friend who came out and she actually had pink sand flown in from Bermuda. I thought that was a bit much. We would dance. We'd have Lesterland and we'd dance until breakfast. We'd have breakfast and then we'd drive on to the next party. I tell you, it was such a silly night, but it was a lot of fun.
Wow.
Now, did you know the other girls
Oh,
from
yes.
school or from town? How did debutantes work?
You have to be,
A member of the...
you have to be put up.
Put up.
Like
Nominated.
Nominated.
You have to be proposed.
Okay.
And I had friends from boarding schools. Matter of fact, often debutantes are presented the year they graduate from high school and they spend the year doing good works before they go to college. But I went right on to Smith.
What year were you debutante of the year?
1951.
I'm gonna look that up.
By the way, I Googled her and her wedding
She
picture
doesn't have
is
any here. She has
unbelievably
some. Oh my
beautiful.
gosh.
You can see she was a model.
Along with
Dulcy Green.
Sylvia Nat, H-N-A-T. I don't know if any of you remember Dr. Nat who lived here. There was an article in the New Jersey paper that the 2 New Jersey debutantes were Sylvia Nat and Dulcina Lee.
But she wouldn't have been Nat then. It was before she married.
Yes, I don't know her maiden name.
Friend or what were you going to ask her?
I never know her.
So how would you get, can I ask how you got when you were going to 10th place? How would you get there? How would
We
you,
had a
what way
carpool.
would you go?
We had a carpool.
Okay.
There were 3 different men. My father was one, and there were 3 of us in this area who went down to Kent Place. They were in different grades, but the fathers would drive us.
Okay.
And we would take the train home.
Right, okay.
It was a walk from school to the train station.
And we would walk from the train station to the train to come home.
Yeah,
It's a good walk from Kent
It's
Place.
a good walk, yes.
Yeah, that is a walk.
Yeah,
Just thinking
for
about
young kids too.
Maybe that's why I didn't know. That was not the report card from Kent Place.
No, I know there's still girls in town. Some of them do go to Kent Place. So it's still up. I think it's there and you'll see Bernards too, that they go to,
In Oak
right?
Knoll,
Is
yeah,
that it?
Oak Knoll,
In
Kent
this
Place.
area?
No,
Oh,
Oak Knoll,
yeah,
Kent Place,
Right.
Bill Walsh.
So what do you miss? What do you miss most? What was the thing that, if you could look back now, what do you miss most about being there versus maybe being in Bernardsville?
Oh, the beauty of being a small country-friendly town where you walked down the street and you knew everybody, and everyone was so friendly. And it was not a city.
Hmm.
And then Bernardsville Mountain wasn't like that at all. You were way out in the country.
I know it.
There was nothing to watch.
But on the corner, walking home from school, on the corner, there was a little drugstore, and we'd go in and buy penny candy on the way home. Licorice sticks. You could get so much for a penny.
Oh,
Where was the candy store here in town, or the
Yes,
candy
where
store?
there's now a restaurant and a stop sign.
The Mockingbird Cafe?
Oh, the Mockingbird.
I
Or
guess.
That was
Mockingbird.
On the left side of the street,
On the Penny, okay. It was a candy store.
yes.
Interesting. We didn't know that, I didn't know that.
No, there was I know there was a fountain.
Well, it may have been a drugstore and a fountain, but.
Yes,
Okay.
it
But it
was.
had penny candy too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it used to be. Yeah.
Belden's, I think it was Belden's, and then they moved.
What's that?
I think it was Belden's.
Yeah, I did a history. I did a walk back just to try to figure out from.
Dulcie, across the street from the mansion, where St. James School and Church is now, what was that property when you lived there?
There was a small church and there was a large white house, which I think is now part of the church, where our friends, the Sanglines lived,
Oh.
and nothing else.
Okay, just open fields then?
Yes.
Mrs. Green, did they have fairs there? Was it the Ferris wheel? I think
No,
someone said that.
absolutely not.
No?
No crates, no
It wasn't
fairs,
there?
nothing like that going on. It's a very quiet, sleepy town.
Oh,
And so you were here from 39 to when?
27.
Or just roughly?
40,
No.
I had it when the taxes grew, so 40.
I think she said 47.
47, I think she
Yeah,
said,
that's right.
47,
Yeah.
and we
I
doubt.
have a question.
Oh, when we moved to Basking Ridge in 1974, we were told like before that first Christmas about the sing, in the center of town. And we were told then that the sing had been going on for about 50 years. Do you remember ever as a
No.
child coming up and singing Christmas carols on Christmas Eve?
Margaret asked me that question.
Oh, she
I
did?
don't remember that.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah, that was definitely going on back then.
Because this year's the 90th year of this
This
thing.
is
This
the
year will be the 90th. And there was
So-
1 year, Larry
During the
pointed
war.
out, 1 year they didn't have it because there was a smallpox epidemic that had gone through and they didn't want people out. So there was 1 year. It's been rain, sleet, snow,
Oh,
whatever.
yes.
They
We've been
always
all of
have.
those.
Yes, all of those.
So you were probably singing in church or churches
Mhm.
on Christmas.
On Christmas Eve, yeah.
Mhm.
Did your family sell the peaches to the Childs? Was that still Child's
Yes, a
restaurant
lot of
chain?
them went to Charles Restaurant. Oh, and they did a lot of experimenting too, and they developed one peach which was as big as a.
Right, I heard that they were huge.
Yeah.
And that Childs would display them in the window
Yes.
of the restaurants because
Yes.
they were the creme de la creme. They were,
Everybody came to
Right.
barter for them, to buy
Right.
them at the barn, which was the end of Maple Way.
That was your dad who did that, right? Just on his own, right? He crossed different.
right, that's what I heard,
Yes,
that it was
yes.
crossbred to increase the size.
Dulcy, I had heard Childs Road was named after Mr. Childs, who had the restaurants in New York, that's correct?
Could be.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
And he had a little spat with Burnsville, and then he had them rezone the area so that he's living in Basking Ridge off of Charles Road.
Is that true?
I think he did live out here somewhere, but we
He
didn't know
lived,
it.
he lived on
Because
Charles Road.
he was from the brothers were from Bernardsville.
And then they had the town rezoned.
That I didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that they had their own
There is that part.
train
yeah.
car behind all the Blue Bloods, because they were of German
Yeah.
descent and they
Because
didn't
if you
come
go
from.
down Charles Road, all of a sudden it becomes Basking Ridge.
Right, yes.
And that's the part, that's when he had it rezoned.
That's,
So he
yeah, I
didn't have to
hadn't
live
heard
in
that,
Basking Ridge.
but, okay.
Oh, no,
heard that,
Burnsville.
but-
So he didn't have to live in Burnsville. He
What I
was-
do know is, well, there were certainly there were two brothers, right? There's Samuel and then there's the other one. Yeah, they did start, he was also, I think, a senator or a congressman, Samuel
Yeah,
Childs.
he did have, yeah.
So the interesting part about that is if you look today, if you basically start at like the Valero, you go right up here and start at the Valero and go all the way down to the old Mill Inn,
Right.
that was their property.
Yeah,
Back
the
then.
whole.
Hence, Childs goes all the way back. Now, one of the things I know when I did some research on him was he wanted, after they ran into an issue where he wanted to have industrial dining and created the first vegetarian menu.
Yeah, that's what kills
And
him.
it tanked the company.
Yeah, that's what kills
He
him.
got fired, basically.
Because he was known
He
for his
got overthrown
hamburgers.
from the board and thrown off the board. He lost control of the company and said, okay, I'm going to go back to what they refer to as Franklin Corners, which is where he's from.
Yep.
And says, I'm going to work on my project, the old Mill Inn. I'm going to restore it, move the barn across the street, turn it into a restaurant. And then he was going to create what he called a historic village. He wanted to create like a Williamsburg right there. So if you go up there today, you'll see there's old schoolhouses, there's the mill, there's a bunch of different things there. I think he had gotten up to like 19 buildings.
There's something else interesting up there. If you go beyond and bear up to the left, Tommy Dorsey had a place
Yes,
there.
on Old Army.
And he had a pool.
Yes.
And one night they had a party, and I think it was the drummer drowned in the pool, and he quickly left town.
Wow.
It's on the market now or recently?
No, it was
been on the
just
market?
sold. It was just sold for
Yeah.
3 million. Yeah, my friend's parents used to own it.
Oh,
The
okay.
drummer drowned in Tommy Dorsey's pool?
Just
So
like they
Tom
do
Dorsey-
now.
We don't know whether it was a fire or he was drunk or what happened.
And I used to dance to the boo room.
Oh, did you? Did you know
Very
Ann?
well, yes.
Ann Galtieri?
Yes, she just
Brenda?
died, yes.
Yes. What is your
Very
name?
Fort Barker.
Isn't it
I was very
interesting?
close with Ann.
Yeah.
It's so interesting as we get together all the things.
And
we
Betty,
know.
and
Yeah,
Betty.
yeah,
Betty.
yeah.
Yeah.
Question, didn't you build all those
Oh, I've heard
houses?
so many stories about the Blue Room.
Yes.
Did you ever go?
Cleaners
No,
around the
I'm not sure if he,
So there were houses, there were houses on the right hand side.
Freddie Mercury's
Were built by
Very
them.
well,
Yeah.
very well.
As little tiny, as
The last 5 years were horrible.
houses.
Horrible.
And 90% of them have been
Were you at the funeral?
not sure, not sure.
Child's Road.
I mean, my story started there when a lot of people said, you know, who are the most famous people, you know, from the area, and a lot of people didn't understand or didn't, you know, that are new to the community here, didn't really understand, you know, how important, basically back in the early 1900s, that whole child's concept. I mean, it was the first phase of what they refer to as, you know, cafeteria-style industrial dining.
Right.
You know, and it took off. I mean, it was like sort of the McDonald's before McDonald's.
So where were these restaurants?
The
Coney
Travis Island in New
Island,
York.
Atlantic City, the
That's
Wall.
all right.
I
I think
saw
they
one in
were.
Atlantic City, and
Okay.
it was famous, the front of the store, of the restaurant, was plate glass, and they would have like a side of beef or a side of pork
Oh,
hanging with the infrared, and it would be turning on a spit and
As it was
cooking.
cooking.
So you just walk down the boardwalk in Atlantic City. I remember as a little kid with my mother and father, and all of a sudden you smell this unbelievable roast beef that it just pulled you in. But they cooked the meat, right? I'm sure that Board of Health nowadays would have a conniption over it. But it was gorgeous.
I thought in the city, Charles was a higher kind of restaurant than that.
Yes.
They started out that way, absolutely. But I think that what they progressed to was how to repeat it and make a chain kind of concept. I think they ended up having at least 28 restaurants or something like that. Something like that.
So Dulcie, how did they get the peaches from the farm? Did Childs get the peaches from your farm to their restaurant?
Well, they would come down to the barn and, just like in New York, to go to the fish market and barter over them.
With their trucks, right, and load them?
Yeah, and they'd load them all up and take them in the city. And some went to Whiteman, some went to Childs, they went all different places because we had
Hunts Point
thousands of
Market,
peach trees and thousands of elm trees.
Wow.
Now, there was something called the Basking Ridge Dairy Farm. Where'd you get your milk from? Did you get your own milk?
No, we had milk from the Shaman's farm, I guess. John Jacob Astor lived in South Philly Avenue, and next door was the Shaman farm.
Okay.
And I think we got milk from them, and it had the cream on the top.
Yes,
Oh.
I remember that too.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, you learned how to-
Because I saw some bottles, and I have no idea where it was it was called the Basky Ridge Dairy, and I just was
And all I
curious.
know is that Nelson Shane and I met at the museum. He's on the board of the Mars Museum. And my friend was in my class at Smith, but I lost touch with her. She doesn't live around here.
So who do you know do you have people that are you're friends with that still live around here in the area?
Nobody anymore.
Nobody, really?
And you,
I think that's because I went away to school and then I went to college.
Right.
and you're active in the Mars Museum? You're active?
I used to be very active, yes. Because I lived for a while in Morristown, and my second husband, Tom Green, was the head of the Peck School.
Oh,
And I was the wife of the headmaster, and then I was very, very busy at Peck. You wouldn't meet with the wife of the headmaster does. And the calls they field at night, like 10 o'clock at night, someone would call and want Mr. Green. I'd say, sorry, he's not available, may I help you? Yes, why do my children have to put their names in their sneakers? They play at the field club. I said, you'll have to talk to Mr. Green about that tomorrow when you go in.
Oh my goodness. Good fielding, very good.
So the house in Bernardsville was not as big as Cedar Hill Farm?
Yes,
or-
tell us about that.
Dunleith, oh, it's much bigger.
Oh,
You're holding
yeah, I was
it
gonna
up.
say, it
It's
looks
huge.
bigger.
It's huge.
Did look bigger.
But unfortunately, it burned.
Yeah, it said
But
in
your family
1960.
lived there from 47 to 61? Because you said it burned in the book says it burned in 61.
It burned in 61, and unfortunately, my mother was in it and died.
Oh,
I never heard that story.
oh my
That
goodness.
wasn't fun to watch. I came up from where we lived toward Princeton, and the firemen were shooting water into an awning. We had an outdoor patio where we'd eat, and I said, you've got to cut the awning. My mother is in that bedroom right there, and shoot the water there, and then the whole thing collapsed. But I have to think that she was overcome by the smoke.
Yes.
Okay.
She was asleep, probably.
She's probably drunk and asleep.
She went to a party, they went to a party, she came home, she and her poodle were locked in her bedroom, and she took a sleeping pill and went to sleep.
Well,
Oh,
they
Is
were
that
having
how
a fight. They were both drinking and they were having a fight, so my mother went in my bedroom and locked the door.
And how the fire starts? Were they smoking?
Well, that was a hard one because the pool, we had a pool, was a long ways away and they didn't get there for a long time. And then other fire trucks came, so the whole thing burned to the ground. There wasn't enough water.
And what was the start of the fire? What caused the fire?
I don't know, was either my mother smoking in bed, or there was a theory that underneath her bedroom there was a liquor cabinet, but I don't know, maybe something short-circuited and the liquor
Ignited?
blew up. No one's ever been sure.
Oh my goodness.
So you were out for the evening, were your
I
brothers?
didn't live there.
No.
I was married and I lived down near
Oh.
Princeton, and so I came
Okay.
back when I heard about it.
Nice.
And I was in bed in my aunt and uncle's room at the house that they had in Mantalooking, and I had been brought back from the emergency room where I went to get an injection of penicillin because I had a terrible earache. And they thought I was asleep, and I was listening to my aunt and uncle talk on the phone to my mother about all this, and I didn't know exactly what was going on, but it was awful, like hearing about it.
Yes.
I was 5. I was 5. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Wow.
And the ruins have been leveled, and another house has been built on the site. And if you go up Claremont Road, at the very top, we owned all of the mountain. It was all fields, and then the house was way back in. Now there are a lot of houses built on it, and someone has built a house on the site. Apparently the Chapins had first built a house there, and it had burned. And they rebuilt it, and it was second, and it had burned. So there are 3 fires in that spot. It's kind of
Oh
unbelievable.
my goodness.
And they built a replica of Dunleith, which is a small version of it. at the end of what would be our fields. So if you come up Claremont Road, you would pass the Chapins, and then you would pass the replica of Dunleith, and then all the fields that have been developed. And I have not seen the house on the side of Dunleith. I don't really want to see it.
Sure.
But there was, when it was there, when the house was there, it was a really big property. There was an Olympic-sized pool, there was a tennis court, and there was a little cottage. And actually, when you got married, you did live there.
There was a pool house, and when we got married, one by one, we all lived there until we had our second child, and then we had to move out and buy our own house. So it was nice. We had a little bit of time to save up
Nice
money
pool
to buy
house.
our own house.
And so we used to see my grandparents, and my sister and I, we were 4 and 5, we spent the night with my grandmother one night, and we stayed up all night. It was like so exciting to be with
Yeah.
grandma. We called her Gammy, and now my daughters and niece have a Gammy. She was amazing, beautiful.
Hearing this story though, again, one of the things you look in these books, so there's 2 volumes of that book. The interesting thing is, when I've done research, is how many, 2 things happened a lot. I never knew this, that a lot of those houses burned.
Yes,
A
they
lot
did.
of them.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
I mean, you look through history in this book, you'll find out how a huge amount of them burned down.
Yes, they did.
The other thing that I found out, which is really interesting, and I'll certainly ask you the question, is there were a number of social clubs that certainly existed. In fact, Bernardsville, really, its claim to fame had been the movement of the Essex Hunt Club from Montclair out to the Bernardsville Mountain and then over into Peapack.
Yes, I used to fox hunt with them.
Okay, I was going to ask you if you were a member of that, okay, and maybe there's obviously the Somerset Hills Golf Club.
The Lake Club, you know.
The Lake Club.
You and
Yeah,
Terry.
we belonged to the Lake Club, and we used to go, once I was with my brother, the pilot, who was so daring, and he had a sail attached to our canoe, and we were tearing along on the ice, and he suddenly said abort, and we got off, or we would have gone over the falls. And we went,
There you go,
and then Somerset Hills Club, yes.
the golf club there too. Okay, so those are certainly 3 of the,
Yeah, I learned to play tennis on grass there.
did you play the paddle tennis too though, over at the?
Yes, we played paddle tennis at the field club in Bernards Town.
And a private.
Okay, because they also had one at the Essex, I remember the Essex Hunt Club was big
Yes.
with paddle tennis, hockey, and
That was a big thing.
so did you do equestrian stuff with like the Merc? I went and met the Mercs there actually once and went out with Betty Merck and her, she reminded me of the ultimate.
Yes, she and one other lady were the mistress of the hunt, and they rode side saddle.
Yes,
Can you imagine jumping side saddle?
yes,
Like
it's
side
crazy, it's
horses.
insane, it's insane.
It's very hard.
That was
Like
a
Johnny
Dulcy.
Rogers did everything because
Go ahead.
One more question.
Question?
women rode to the hunt. They did just everything the men did, but they did it side.
Did you ever horseback ride with Jackie Onassis?
No, she came out later, and she actually was very rude. Her secretary called and said, Mrs. Onassis will be riding with the hunt, and she was told that she can ride with the hunt when she is invited to join the hunt. Because you have to join your colors.
There you go.
You have to have hunted enough and jumped enough and shown your quality well enough to be invited. You don't just say, I'm joining you.
And they wouldn't let her.
Well, my brother belonged to the hunt club, and he used to ride with Merck, which was 95 years old.
Mm.
Wow.
Right?
I go,
Well, I stopped on the last hunt when I was about 14, because my horse, I wish I had a different horse, very temperamental, refused to stone wall and throw me into it and knock me out. And you have to get up on your horses, you know, and ride it home. You have to do that. I couldn't see for 2 weeks, but I had to ride that horse home. Otherwise, I'll never get on a horse again. So I gave it up at that point.
So the locals, just so you know, the former mayor Holtaway in Bedminster, his wife, has been very aggressive at if you look right, not here, there was an equestrian, the equine trail map about where you could ride horses.
So this is like in Harding, the bridle paths?
Yeah, the bridle paths are trying to rebuild them,
Right.
but the estate properties keep getting smaller and smaller. And what
Even-
happens is their fences are also getting higher and higher.
Well, even in New Vernon, there was one, I lived on Long Hill Road when I was first married, and my son was out with a BB gun, and he saw something go by, and he was about to shoot him. I said, "Don't do that, that's the hunt going on."
When Jackie Onassis moved out and she was roundabout here, people would mistake my mother for Jackie.
Oh, really?
Hardly.
Yes, yes, yes. So
Why would she make that up?
Hardly.
That's obviously
Gorgeous,
obvious.
same age, sunglasses.
Right?
My friends, the Glyns, own the health food store. Remember the little health food store?
Right, right.
And Eileen Totten, who was,
Oh, yeah.
okay, Eileen was one of my very best friends. She was in the store one day by herself, and she happened to be in the health food store working. Nobody was there, helping her mother out. And she looked across the street. Remember, there used to be the Ridge car,
Right.
sold cars. And she
Right.
said, "Oh my God, look who's coming out." It was Jackie Onassis. She used to buy her cars there all the time. So she's like, "Oh dear God, don't let her come here. Oh dear God." And as she's praying, what do you think happened? She's right across the street. She was with a group of people, but they remained back and she came in. And she said to me, she walked in, she said, my heart was pounding. And she said, "Hello, Mrs. Onassis." And she said she was very, very sweet. And she just ordered,
And she
take this, or
whis- she
take that, or
whis-
take that. And
She
I said,
whispers.
and yeah, she was very, very quiet, so my friend was very talkative, and she said I didn't say a word to her. Just put everything in the bag, and then she paid, and I said, "Well, what did you say?" And she said, "Well, I said is thank you, Mrs. Onassis." but she used to go around all the time. Every year she'd buy a car in the Ridge
Yeah.
car shop. It was cool.
She rode with my sister-in-law at school.
But they did say outside of the fires, which were certainly detrimental to a lot of the property and the wealthy, they said the number 2 killer in the area for the wealthy was men jumping, horse jumping, and they said what was the cause, and they said they'd fall off the horse and be trampled. And that happened, if you read the history books, you'll see how many famous men died in these equestrian accidents. However, I had no idea. They said they did, back in the day, they didn't do it, blood alcohol tests. They were all way over, the limit.
They used to serve drinks.
So they didn't have much pain when they went, but they went usually after being pretty drunk, is what I have read. Just throw that out.
I was in the first steeplechase before it became the grand races.
Yes.
It started at the field where they had Virginia Day Nursery.
Oh, yeah.
Sam?
Oh, where is
Sam?
it?
By the day.
It started there and across the road and then went to, I guess it's
Oh, yeah,
Fly
yeah,
or Pine
yeah.
right there.
Yep.
And my horse refused the first jump, and I could have died because my 2 brothers came out to help me, and I said, "You don't help me, get on the horse, I got it myself."
Of course,
She's the original woman's liver.
there you go.
You always have to have your hot parties, right?
Wow, fascinating.
Dulcie, your memories are golden. They have just enriched our afternoon today beautifully. Thank you so much for sharing. Far exceeded my expectations, and I love the round table bit of it.
Well, I have learned so much from all of you, and it's just such a pleasure to be back here to meet you. Thank you.
I hope you're not nervous. Are you still nervous?
Yes, we hope you're not nervous.
Are you still nervous?
among us?
Not anymore.
Told you we will bite.
Because we all feel like we're friends now, because we feel like we know you. So thank you very, very much. We're going to invite you over to have a cookie, a little bit of water. Please visit our museum. I'll open upstairs if anyone hasn't been upstairs to the classroom.
Yes, go upstairs.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
We owe you a tremendous debt.
It's my
Thank you.
pleasure.